Okay, hello. We are now live. You're live, and I'm live, and we're happy to be alive. And we are live streaming here from my office at Berkeley. You are now in my office at Berkeley. We're going to be talking about politics, economics, what's new. I may even, if there is time, get to some holiday movies that I've really enjoyed, and maybe you will enjoy too. Also, your questions, very important. So this is a half-hour streaming. You can obviously participate to the extent that you want, and don't want. In fact, if you maybe you don't want, so just don't stream. But if you are there, hello and welcome. We're thinking about doing this in January, starting in January, maybe every week. But you give us some advice and your counsel about that, about whether you think we should. All right, events of the last few days. The thing that I've been thinking about most is the presidential debates, particularly Democratic debate versus the Republican debate. Those of you who watched the Democratic debate Saturday night, and there are not that many of you who did. I did. But you must have been struck, as I was, by the difference between the Democratic debate and the Republican debate in terms of just, well, let's be very candid about it. The degree of intelligence, the logic, the coherence, the use of facts. I mean, the Democrats actually have a kind of reality principle that they are using, while the Republican debates have been, I have never seen in my life, over 50 years of watching politics and many, many years. The first debate I watched was the Nixon-Kennedy debate. I watched it. I wasn't all that old, but I was old enough to appreciate what was going on. And I remember being very impressed by the quality of the debate. And then in subsequent years, I've watched primary debates. Some of them have been very good. Some of them have been less than perfect. But I've never seen a primary debate in a among presidential candidates or putative presidential candidates that has been so devoid of content, of meaning, of fact, of logic, of sort of common sense as the Republican debates have been. The most recent Republican debate, I think, was the worst of all. Now, the irony here is that the Democratic debates are being put on weekends. On Saturday nights or Sundays, when people are least likely to watch them. The Republican debates are on weeknights in prime time. The Democratic debates, there are very few of them. There are fewer than, well, I think that in total, the last time I looked, there were going to be about 6 or 7 Democratic debates. There are twice that many Republican debates scheduled. So you have, the kind of paradox of the Democrats putting on very, very good debates, issues that the public needs to be aware of, arguments that the public really does need to hear, but nobody's hearing them, partly because they are being hidden, while the Republicans are filling the public's mind with garbage, in some cases bigotry and scaremongering and hate-mongering, and yet those Republican debates are seen by huge numbers of people and are on prime time and are not tucked away on weekends. The next Democratic debate is going to be, I believe, January 17th. That is a 3-day weekend. That's a Sunday. The NFL playoffs occur on that Sunday when the Democratic debate is going on. It's a 3-day weekend. I'd be surprised if 24 people actually watch the Democratic debate, the next Democratic debate. Now, why is it that the Democratic debates have all been scheduled in such hidden ways? Well, some people who are slightly conspiratorially minded might say that the DNC doesn't want to give Bernie Sanders or even Martin O'Malley a platform, wants to kind of keep the boat from rocking a little bit too much and entrench the establishment and the establishment candidate of Hillary Clinton. But I think that you don't have to be conspiratorially minded to conclude that it is just safer, all told, for a party that has a clear front runner not to rock the boat at all and not to have very much and not to make very much out of the debates. And this might be good for Hillary Clinton. It might even be good for the Democratic Party. Who knows? But it is not good for the public. And it is particularly not good for the public when the Republicans are summoning huge numbers of people and their garbage is not being in any way rebutted. And so you got a serious imbalance here. I mean, it's the same imbalance we find in a slightly different dimension in the media overall with regard to this moral equivalency between the Democratic and Republican parties. Every time somebody who is a reporter or even a pundit on television talks about the Democrats and Republicans, the notion is, well, the Democrats this, the Republicans this. I'm sorry. Again, I have been in and involved around politics for, 50 years? And I've never seen a party, the Republican Party, that is more sort of off the edge, just sort of not just right-wing, but ranting. And there's no moral equivalency, I think, to be honest. And, granted, I am a Democrat. I've served in a Democratic administration. But I think I know a lot of Republicans, a lot of ex-Republican leaders, people who are former Republican members of Congress, who are apoplectic about what has happened to the Republican Party. Please, if they are out there, if they're possibly listening to me now, I doubt it, but speak out, speak up. You should not, if you are a former Republican leader, if you are a senior member of the Republican Party, if you're an old gray beard in the Republican establishment, speak out, talk about what is happening to your party. Make a fuss about this. And if you're a Democrat, I think you ought to make a fuss about there being so few debates, and so few debates that are just so inaccessible on weekends, because America needs to understand the issues that we are dealing with and going forward with. Now, besides all this, there is this kind of symbiotic relationship between the media and Donald Trump. I was watching, yesterday I came across an article, I think it was the Washington Post, in which the writer, and it was a news article, and the writer said, it is amazing how just the day after the Democrats have their debate, all the attention has shifted back to Donald Trump. Without any ironic understanding or recognition that the reason the attention is shifted back to Trump is that the Washington Post and other major media outlets have shifted the attention back to Trump. I mean, there's a tautology here. They are reporting on the fact that Trump is getting all this media attention while giving him all of this media attention. And of course, Trump himself is designing his whole campaign around getting media attention. So it is very easy, if you are not thinking about what's happening and understanding this tautology and this symbiotic relationship between Donald Trump and the media, to assume that Donald Trump is the leading candidate simply because Americans are enthralled by him or following him. No, he's the leading candidate because he is getting huge amounts of free airtime, free advertising, like no candidate has in history, because he is being so bombastic, so outrageous. The media wants to give him airtime. It sells advertising, but it doesn't serve the public. The other thing you want to keep in mind is that only 24% of registered voters in the United States are Republicans. Can I say that again? Only 24% of registered voters in the United States are Republicans. And Donald Trump may have 35 or 38% of them in polls, but do the math. That means that Donald Trump has about an 8.6, 8.8% following of the American public. That's it, folks. So when you see all of this media fuss about Donald Trump and all of this excitement and all of these crowds, do not for a moment believe that he is actually doing as well as it seems. It's a combination of media hype and symbiotic relationship with the media, and also this very strange notion that somehow if you've got 28 or 30 or 35% of the Republicans that are 24% of the voters who are registered in the United States, you are actually claiming some significant number of Americans. Not true. Just a couple of words about the economy, because today the president was interviewed. The interview was broadcast, and in that interview, he said that he thought that one of the reasons that Donald Trump and some of this hatefulness is actually getting a purchase in America is because so many Americans are fearful and so many Americans are scared. I think that's right. At least there is broad-based fear. The economy, on paper, if you just look at the 5% unemployment figure, it looks like it's pretty good. But the most important thing that's not being talked about enough, it seems to me, is that you've got a very, very low, what's called labor participation rate. That's the percentage of the working age population that's actually in jobs. It is now almost as low as it has been in 40 years, almost a 40-year record low. And that means you've got huge numbers of people who are working part-time, who'd rather be working full-time, or who are too discouraged even to look for work, who've just given up because there's no job around where they live and they can't possibly afford to live in a place where there are jobs. Now that reality is affecting a lot of Americans and a lot of American voters, and arrayed on top of that, layered on top of that reality is another reality, economic reality, that we've got to be very clear about, and that's economic insecurity. It's not just low wages anymore, it's not just fear of losing job, period. It's also that you don't know where your next job is going to come from, where your next paycheck is going to come from, how much that paycheck is going to be. We have this on-demand economy, and people, in the business community say, oh, this is terrific. We have the sharing economy. Well, what's being shared is economic insecurity. What's being shared is a smaller and smaller slice of a bigger and bigger pie. What's being shared is really very little, which is one reason why so many people have to settle for these share economy jobs, this on-demand economy, where they are on call, but they don't know when and if and how they're going to be employed. This is not good for Americans. It may be great for companies. It may help the bottom line. It may increase, as we've seen over the past 10 years, a gradual increase in the percentage of the entire economy going into corporate profits. But at the same time, we are seeing a decrease in the percentage of the economy going into paychecks. And part of that decrease has to do with the fact that people are on call. It doesn't show up in the paychecks, but that insecurity is eating away at a lot of Americans. And so I think the president is right when he says that somebody like Trump, or somebody who is trying to blame others or scapegoat others, or somebody who is using hatefulness, is preying upon, exploiting that degree of economic insecurity and economic fear about the future. Yet another reason why Bernie Sanders is correct. We've got to deal with this economic issue, the economic issue of inequality, of stagnant wages, of a large and persistent population of working poor. We shouldn't have any working poor. I mean, if you're working full-time, you shouldn't be poor in America. All of this is a big part of the American problem today. And the fact that more and more of our income and wealth are going to the top colors everything. It affects our politics. It affects the polarization of our politics. It affects power, because the people at the top have more and more power to influence the political decisions that in turn are going to determine not only who's president and who's going to be in state government and national government, but also what the rules of the game are going to be. So having said all that, and we are just about in time for your questions, but I did want to sneak in my favorite movie of the year. Are you ready? Can I have a drum roll? There's no drum roll. See, if I had a staff here, if I had a real, if this was a production company, I'd have a drum roll. All right, my favorite movie of the year. Now, it may not be yours. If I'm going to recommend a movie and you go out and see it and you go, that was a piece of crap, don't blame me, because our tastes may be different. But I loved this movie. It's called Brooklyn. And it stars a woman whose name I can't pronounce. Her last name is Rowan. The first name is what? It's an Irish name. Forget it. I can't pronounce it. But see it. It's a beautiful, and it's a wonderful holiday movie. It's a wonderful movie to take your family to, and it's very touching. All right. It is time for your questions. And let us have the first question. Okay, this is from Judith Tice, and Judith writes, is college still worth it for someone who has no other option than taking out a large student loan? Judith, college graduates are still earning much more than people who just have a high school degree. In fact, over a lifetime, college graduates are earning about almost $1.2 million more on average than people with a high school degree. But let me just say this. If you had asked me this question 10 or 15 years ago, I would have said undoubtedly it is worth it. But now that the cost of college keeps on going up faster than inflation, and these college loans are burdening many of our young people and their families, you've got to think very carefully about the college you do select. I don't recommend to young people that everybody has to go to college, or everybody has to go to college immediately after high school. Many young people should take a year or two out. Many young people should think about vocational or technical school instead of college. Many young people, in fact, some of my best students here at Berkeley have gone to community college and had 2 years in community college, and then found something they really are passionate about, done very well, and then transferred to a 4-year public institution like Berkeley. In fact, I was giving the half-year graduation keynote commencement address yesterday for the Berkeley class of 2015. And the student who gave the class address had gone to a community college and then transferred to Berkeley, done extremely well. It is a route that is really an important route, and it is available. It's affordable for many families, many students. But that reminds me, that graduation was so inspiring yesterday. I had a chance to shake hands with about half of the graduates, and they were, it's the most diverse group of people at the most excellent university. Now, granted, I do have some biases here that I can imagine. All right, next question. This comes from Sheila Smith. Please explain what you think will happen economically for those states that did or did not expand healthcare access. Sheila, I think you're referring to Medicaid access. We've got a lot of mostly Republican states or Republican legislatures that are not expanding Medicaid access. Well, what's going to happen essentially is the citizens are going to get a terrible deal, because the federal government, that is taxpayers overall, including the taxpayers in those states, are picking up most of the cost. Initially, totally all of the cost, and then subsequently something like 97% of the cost. And that means that you've got an awful lot of people who are maybe not very poor, but certainly near poverty, or working class people who would otherwise have qualified for Medicaid and are not going to get the benefits of this program. That's bad for these people. It's bad for these states. The people in these states are paying for this in any event, and why not? I hope the people in the states whose governors and legislatures are not expanding Medicaid are going to pay the price in the elections, because this is an irresponsible move. And it's bad for, well, it's also bad for these economies, because that means you have more and more people who are spending more and more on health care, and therefore can't spend it at the mall, or in retail stores, or for anything else, which hurts the economy. Next question. Okay, this is from Paul Subkoff. And Paul, you ask, do you think Bernie's political stand will have a long-term effect on the Democratic Party? Paul, I think there is no doubt. If Bernie becomes the presidential candidate and becomes president, it will have a big effect on the Democratic Party and on the nation. But his political stand, even if he is not nominated or doesn't become president, I think will still have an effect. Just like the Occupy movement put inequality really on the map, Bernie Sanders' candidacy has extended that effort and put very specific policies on the table that Democrats will have to either rally behind in the future or explain why they are not. For example, we were just talking about education. I was just talking about education. Bernie Sanders' plan to provide tuition-free public higher education, a very important step. Or his plan to provide single-payer health care. I think it's a logical next step beyond the Affordable Care Act. And I think Democrats will have to have to be more answerable as to why they are not supporting these things. Next question. This is from R.G. Bengali. And R.G., you ask, what is the future of the middle class in America in the next 5 or 10 years? Well, I don't know if you saw, R.G., or anybody else who's watching, Pew. The Pew research team did a study of what's happened to the middle class just over the last 10 years. And for the first time in American history, since we have had data, they have shown that the middle class is actually shrinking. And it's shrinking quite considerably. And they define middle class as anyone who is earning, a family between, I think it's 48,000 and about 85,000. I could have that a little bit wrong, but it's roughly that. And there are fewer and fewer families in that middle class. If we keep on in this direction, we are not going to have the kind of middle class that was critical to both the economy and the political stability of this country. If you don't have a vast middle class, you don't have the purchasing power to keep the economy going, which is one reason that this recovery has been so anemic. Also, if you don't have a vast middle class, you don't have places for the poor to ascend into. And also, if the middle class keeps shrinking, you have a politics that is more polarized and angrier and liable to be scapegoating, which we already are seeing some of the beginnings of. So I think that it is vitally important that we develop policies that really reverse the trend we're going in. Okay, next question. This is from Patty Doherty, who asks, why is Obama pushing the Trans-Pacific Partnership? Patty, I am not 100% sure, but I can tell you what I suspect. What I suspect is that the business community and Wall Street have been on this from the beginning of the Obama administration. In fact, it's something that the Bush administration was beginning to work on. And the business community, big business, and Wall Street can be very influential, even in a Democratic administration. And it's not just their campaign contributions. It's also that a president, any president, and his staff see a lot of these people. They are present at all kinds of occasions. They're very visible. And their presence, their lobbying presence, their informal presence creates a climate in which the president probably said, okay, well, this is a good thing to do. I keep hearing it's a good thing to do. I keep hearing it's a good thing to do because it's the same people telling me it's a good thing to do. And he committed himself. And then once the president has committed himself to trying to get something like the Trans-Pacific Partnership done, it is very hard to uncommit. Now, the good news is that a lot of Democrats in Congress and also a lot of Republicans and also a lot of people and citizens and parliaments around the Pacific Rim are having second thoughts. So it may not actually go through. It may not be ratified. Next question. All right, and this is from Surfsista, asks, how can capitalism survive if the bulk of society is no longer middle class? Well, I tried to suggest this a moment ago. Capitalism cannot survive In fact, capitalism does need, particularly American capitalism, a large and growing middle class. 70% of all of the national economy in the United States is based on consumer spending, personal spending by consumers. That's 70%. If those consumers don't have enough money, if their paychecks aren't large enough, then there simply can't be enough economic activity to sustain the economy. You don't have to be a rocket scientist. You don't have to be a nuclear physicist or even a PhD economist to understand that basic principle. Next question. Michael Woods, you ask, what are your thoughts on ALEC, A-L-E-C? Well, ALEC, the American Legislative, what is EC Council? I can't remember what the Exchange Council. This is a conservative front group. It's a right-wing front group that develops so-called model pieces of legislation for state legislatures. They are all pieces of legislation that the business community has been pushing, such as anti-union legislation, and it's basically sold to legislatures, state legislatures, very, very quietly. There's very little public discussion. It happens because there are payoffs, and I don't mean corruption, I mean payoffs in the form of campaign contributions, although there may be some corruption as well. ALEC is, in other words, a bad deal. It is corroding and harming American politics and making our government work not for you, not for average working people, but for big corporations. And that is a huge problem. We've got about 2 minutes left. Let me just take a couple more of your questions. All right. This is from John Bauer. Have you seen Star Wars yet? And what are your thoughts? You know, John, I haven't seen it. I was going to go see it the other night, but the lines were too long, and I just don't want to go stand in line forever, so I thought that I'd wait. But a lot of people I know have seen it, and they're very excited by it. The Star Wars and also the superhero genre, which is slightly different from Star Wars, but all of these things are coming back. They're coming back partly because you have parents of young children who want to go back to their own childhood and they remember Star Wars. But they're also coming back, I think, because the superhero is a very attractive icon, particularly in an America where we don't have the kind of superheroes we used to have. In fact, faith in almost every institution has declined dramatically. We don't trust people, presidents, major figures, CEOs, the way we used to. And yet, many Americans, for reasons we've already covered, are scared. They're insecure economically and politically. They're also worried, obviously, San Bernardino. They're worried about terrorism. And so people maybe want a superhero. They want somebody who is just going to fight for them. And this is going to have to be the last question. And this is from Dalton Stevens. What steps are needed to be taken to disentangle capitalism from the democratic process? Well, it's a good question to end on, Dalton. What we need to do is get, and this is first and foremost, this is my wish for 2016 and beyond, that we get or make a start at getting big money out of politics, corporate money, Wall Street money, billionaire money. It is corroding our system. It is ruining our democracy. It is making people cynical, causing people to say, why should I bother? I'm not going to even vote. And that's a self-perpetuating kind of downward cycle. So we've got to, if we can't reverse Citizens United right away, at least if you are in a state that has a referendum, do what several states are doing. Get public financing of elections. Make sure you support candidates that are going to be in favor of public financing. Also, full disclosure of where all campaign money is coming from. We don't have that now. A lot of it is dark money that nobody knows where it's coming from. And also make sure you support for president somebody who is going to appoint another Supreme Court justice. All we need is the 5th Supreme Court justice to replace Anthony Kennedy, who was the writer of Citizens United. or at least fill a slot that in effect will give us 5 votes to get rid of and repeal that horrible, shameful decision called Citizens United, which in my book is right up there, or I should say right down there, with Dred Scott and Bush against Gore and some other shameful Supreme Court decisions. I wanted to end on a happier note. Maybe there is a way to do this. I wanted to ask for your tax-deductible year-end donation to Inequality Media, and I will put on the Facebook right after I'm done with this. I'll put where you can make that contribution. That would be a nice thing to do because we do videos that people seem to like. We've had 10 million people watch our videos so far over the past year, like the Uncle Bob video we just did. And it is important. It's a way of getting out the truth. Those who don't want to tell you the truth have a lot of vehicles. They have a lot of media, such as, let's face it, Fox News. But those who want to actually tell the truth don't have very much media. We have this. We have you and me sitting here trying to talk about what's going on, and we have our videos, and the videos do need some help. So if you can help, that would be just great. I want to just wish you very, very best for the holiday season, and if you celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, and Happy Hanukkah if you've already had Hanukkah, and the best for the new year. I feel optimistic. Now, yes, I know what you're saying. How can he be an optimist? Well, I am an optimist. I'm an optimist because I've been around long enough to see that America usually does the right thing. That we, in this next year, I believe, are going to elect the right person president. I believe that we are going to stop this tide of hatefulness and bigotry. I think we're going to recognize that we are much better than all of that. And that is my wish for the next year. And in the meantime, I want to thank my assistants, Yale Bridge and Zoe Beck, for helping today with all of this. Thank you for watching and listening, and please let us know if you'd like us to do this once a week. We'll figure out a time. We'll stick to that time. We'll do it every week, and then maybe you can have more predictability in your life as well. Happy New Year.